Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Power of Women in Insurance podcast. My name is Teresa Kitchens, your host, and today we're talking with Tinsley English, and we are here to talk about all things powerful women out there in the world making a difference, making the world better for tomorrow. And I just dropped my pen, sorry about that. And just all the things about being an amazing human, amazing woman, and an amazing leader. So, Tinsley, welcome to the podcast.
Teresa, I am so excited to be here with you and your audience. I love it that you dropped your pen. Like, let's go off script. Let's be comfortable. Show up.
Which is how everybody around here.
Yeah, let's just keep it real.
I love it. I love it. Well, Tinsley, we are obviously a podcast for women within the insurance space. And I know one of our passions here is to be able to talk to all women in all different aspects of insurance, right? It's not just on the agency side. It's not just on the side of producers or sales or corporate or any of those things. So we want to make sure that we start off by getting to know you, your role in the insurance space just a little bit. I know your passion is so much larger than that as well. So we want to make sure we get into that. And I want to make sure that everybody knows kind of where you're coming from and a little bit about your career and kind of how you've been navigating the big world out there.
Sure. Well, I'll start off from the beginning. And everybody says I either fell into insurance or I took this agency over for my father. So I actually decided to major in this in college. And primarily the reason was I got to my junior year and I was an international business major. I really had no idea what I was going to do. And my mom made it really simple for me. She was a single mom, business owner, had raised two daughters. Nice. I have no idea how she paid these bills, but she said, I'll make it real simple for you. You have to have a job the day you graduate from college. I don't care what you're doing. And that really stuck with me. And I had approached my college career like that. I had to either take a real estate or an insurance 101 class to get my business degree. And I thought maybe I'd want to go to law school one day. So I knew that with insurance, everything is a contract and I might find that interesting. And so got into the class. The professor, he was a total salesman and tells us, I know that you're here to check the box and get through this elective and move on with your life. But 95% of the kids that are graduating with this degree have an internship or job the day they graduate. So 1 + 1 = 2.
Just totally connected with you.
Light bulb. And I actually just really enjoyed the class. I joined the insurance club and called my mom and said, hey, Mom, I think I'm going to change my major. And she said, to what? And I said, insurance. And she said, oh my gosh, Tinsley, you are going to be so boring. You're too social. You're just too extra for this. And I said, no, there's people like us out there and I'm having a lot of fun and I'm learning a lot and there's longevity.
Yeah.
This is something everybody needs. So it was really one of those things that what started as just checking the box turned into a 25-year career.
I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that you just caught the bug, because I think when people, so many people that enter the insurance space, right? And when they do, they think, oh, I need a job, right? Like that, the company was hiring. And I think it's one of those things where when we're in that situation, a lot of those people, like most of the world, have no idea the breadth and the scope of the industry, the way that it benefits our culture, our community, our finances, how it's really the backbone of our economy. But then again, at the same point, they think it's going to be dry, stodgy, whatever. But one thing, whenever you get in it, is it's never the same day to day. It's always changing. Everything's always different. Every agency is different. Every carrier is different. The way that everybody does their software is different. The way that they market is different. Everything's different. And there's always, always, always something to learn. And that's what I love about it. And I know we were talking just a few minutes ago before we came in that my daughter joined the industry 3 years ago. And when she did, she was like, oh, it's a family business, and I know that since then she's like, Mom, I have no idea. She was like, this is so interesting. And it's so funny to see people who come behind us who have those conversations of if you're sitting in a restaurant or whatever, right? And somebody spills water. I don't know. I'm going to make something up, right? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's an E&O issue. You better get that picked up pretty quick. I'm not, but there's a GL issue or whatever, like slip and fall, workers' comp, whatever. It's so funny to me when she brings things like that up, because when she was a kid and I would bring things up like that, she would just roll her eyes and go, "Oh, Mom, please." But then it's so funny to see people really embrace it and love the industry. And I love that you did that, especially at such a young age. And so
I pull people in
the industry.
I just grab people and pull them in. I pulled a cousin in. I got my husband into this industry. He does operations like I do at an agency. So he and I'll be driving together, and our daughter, who has no interest in getting into business, she's almost 16. We'll point that out. Like if we see somebody on a roof, we're like, well, he's not tied off. Like we just notice things that nobody else in our family notices, and we just chuckle to ourselves. And dinner time conversation is, well, what agency management system, what challenges are you having, or what designation does that person have that you're considering hiring? And so it's just so stimulating. But I love that you are like blonde and bubbly and fun, because one of my very best friends that I met early on in the industry and have known for 25 years, she's my insurance sister from another mister. We have so much fun together. We always have. We were chuckling the other day about a memory that had to happen in 2001. And we had gone to a local bar for a happy hour or whatever after a long day of working. And we'd actually played our managing director and one of the producers in pool. And we totally ran the table. And they walked away like scratching their heads, like, what went on? And just have to say, her name's Tina, my name's Tinsley. We're both blonde and, just kind of extra. And so I think knowing her and seeing what she's done, she was an agency owner, took it over from her dad, very much like you. We've always just found fun and delightful people. Yes. And it's an industry for everybody, whether you're analytical, you're more social. It's just, there's so many great things that I could go on about.
Yeah. It's a great industry. And I think one of the things that people don't know about the insurance industry is that there's so many different aspects of it. Is that if you want to be on the agency side, that's fine. Carriers, and even in carriers, there's so many different levels of all these things, right? And it's just, you can go anywhere. Underwriting, you can go into claims, you can go into management, finances, billing, you can go into operations, structures, marketing, so many different things. And it just is amazing that people can be in the industry without having to be behind a desk selling insurance, but they can if that's what they love to do. But they could go into risk management, right? And consult with big companies on how to be able to make sure that we mitigate risk, right? Talking to clients and things like that. Such a big industry. And I love, so you fell into the industry, you started, what did you say, 25 years ago, right?
25, almost 25 years ago. I'm scratching my head. I can't believe it's flown by.
And I'm only 18. I don't know how that happens.
I know. Well, I just turned 21. So, but I started right out of college, 10 days out of college, moved to Cleveland, Ohio from Georgia. So big shocker. Didn't know anybody, but I'm social. So I made lots of friends and learned a lot. I was working in large casualty on very big risk management size accounts. So very fortunate to have that experience very early on. And then over the past 25 years, I've worked in various facets of the industry. I've worked in the mega broker space. I've worked in the privately held boutique space for agencies. I worked on the carrier side for 5 years. And what I always say to people is, yes, I probably wore every hat in the agency, from customer service rep up through senior account executive. But then it was time for me to give back to the person that I'd been 5-10 years ago and move into operations. And I really just wanted to affect change and make their lives easier. So I wrote my own job description. And that's what's so great about this industry is you can evolve your career, take what you know, and then take what you love and meld that together into something that really excites you.
Well, I love the fact that you said, hey, I have a passion for this, and I see how this can be done in this business. And you kind of created your job description. I think that's great, because a lot of times we think we apply for a job, that's the job, right? We don't realize that we can kind of take it, make it, work it. We can maybe say, hey, how about if I added this on, or whatever, right? We can still have our own identity and our own space and create inside this industry as well.
and curate, like you're a career curator.
Yes.
And it's your responsibility to do so. If you're not finding what you want within your job, it is your responsibility to see if you can make it more robust to hit those marks. And if you're still kind of struggling with it, it's your responsibility to also go to your manager or your leadership team and say, hey, I'm struggling with some job satisfaction. What can I do? Or what can you advise me to do to get more out of it and add value in a different way?
I love that. I love that. What a good way to put that too. Is that, I'm really, what did you say? I'm searching for some additional maybe job satisfaction and how
and fulfillment
need to help in certain ways or certain ideas or certain concepts. And I love that because then too, you're inviting the company that you work for to come along on that journey. You're not just walking in, making a demand. Well, I want blah, 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 right? And I think a lot of people do that. We walk in, we say, I want to come on in. I want to be assertive, right? We think that we have to be assertive to be able to get things that we want. But the reality is bringing people along with you is so much more powerful with being able to make sure that we build a team, that we're cooperative. Maybe we bring other people along on that journey with us. And maybe we even open the eyes and the ears of the people that we're working around.
And get creative. Like, yes, we have to operate within the confines of the law and the statutes and the regulations, but like, let's put on our creative caps. There's nobody that ever said you cannot be creative in insurance. And I think if we embrace that and broadcast that, we find a lot more people wanting to find out a little bit more about what's going on in this party.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you have done such a great job. I know you do also outside of your insurance career. You are also a huge women's advocate. And I know that you've written a great book, Grit and Growth, and the great
Gumption
of women. I love that title, the great growth and gumption. Also, I know why I can't say the word growth today. It's not a hard word. Great growth and gumption for women. What a great title, just in and of itself. Just because that's what so many women and just so many people in general. I think we get to a point in our lives where we go, what am I going to do next? Or what do I want? Or who am I? Or whatever that concept is. And that's what you have to do. You have to dig deep. You have to find that grit for the growth. And you got to get the gumption to be able to
get it.
I love it.
And it plays into like, if you picture it, I have a Venn diagram that I associate with this with. And you've got grit, then you've got the growth, and then you've got the gumption. And it intersects to what I call G-force. And it's like G-force acceleration of your career. And you can use these principles within your daily life. I draw on these tools from each of these pillars all the time. So I got a call to write this book at 3:00 in the morning from God. And he said, you've got to write a book. And he said this in October of last year. And he always slides into my DMs at 3:00 in the morning because he knows I'm like still and I'm finally quiet and I'm not doing anything. And he can get me there. So it was like a wake up call for real. And he said, I need you to write it fast. So I wrote it in 60 days. It was poured out of me nights and weekends. It was nights and weekends.
And it's not, and I just want to make sure everybody out there, this book is available on Amazon. Okay. You can go grab it. But here's the deal. It's not like a big encyclopedia, whatever. It's a great, easy read. It's like 180 pages, something like that. Probably
but
it has so much meat to it. And it is so good. It's so inspirational with the concept of just, like you said, helping to be able to get you there, right? Like getting your mindset in that space to go out there and just really go get them.
I think it was because, Teresa, I was promoted without an instruction manual. I joke about this all the time. So many of us in the agency space were great senior account managers. We were great individual contributors. So we get a bigger book and all of a sudden we need people to support us on that book. And they just throw an account manager on your team or an assistant. And you don't have any formal leadership training. So what do? You show them how to do things the way that you got there. And in my case, it was exactly how I got there. And you're going to do it the way I did it. You're going to talk to the client or the markets the way I did it. And you're going to correspond. Everything should be just like a carbon copy of a Tinsley, which that's not real life. And it's not a way to bring creativity and individuality. But I had to pay an executive coach a lot of money to tell me that I didn't have emotional intelligence and I didn't have empathy. And that hurt. But it was one of the best pieces of advice that I got because I did have that grit. I had that self-determination.
Right.
And I had the gumption. I was always ready, willing, and able to take chances. I think having a mom that started a single business when she didn't have 2 dimes. I mean, she had a single mom that would start her own business. She didn't have 2 dimes to rub together, but she did it and made it work. I think I always had those too, but there was something missing. It was in the middle. It was that growth piece. And once I got that and realized that it's not about me as the leader, it's about my team.
Yeah.
And if I focus on my team every day and how I'm showing up for them, then it all comes together.
It does. It does. I love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit about I know you said that you wrote it in, what did you say, like 90 days? What did you say?
60 days.
So tell me a little bit about that process, because obviously, you can't really go to work and just say, hey, I'm told to write a book, so I'm not going to show up for the next 60 days.
No, you can't.
Right? I mean, you're writing, you're working, but it's just pouring out of you. I'm sure at this point, it's probably like a cathartic thing, because you've got so many years of just knowledge and experience in corporate. You've seen so many things over the years, and people that have done it right and people that have done it wrong, right? They're out there in the corporate world and out there in the big world, right? Even when we go into volunteer experiences, we go to churches, when we go to schools, when our kids are growing up, not to mention work environments, we see things done really, really well sometimes. And sometimes we see things done really, really badly.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what that writing process was like.
Well, it can be very daunting. Like, people get super intimidated by writing a book because they'll sit there and I don't know if a cursor blinks anymore, but you can remember when they did.
The concept,
they'll just
right?
stare at the blinking cursor on the first page and they'll never get started. So I had several people in my camp of advisors that said, here's what you do. You list 100 questions that you want to answer for your ideal reader, which in this case was an emerging leader, a woman who I didn't want to be promoted without an instruction manual. I wanted to hand her something. So I wrote out all those questions that I wanted to answer in my book. And then I'm an total Excel nerd. So I put the chapters, and there's a certain way that you need to design a book. You got to hook somebody in the first 3 chapters,
okay,
or they're going to put the book back on the shelf. So I designed what I wanted the chapters to look like. And then I nested all the questions, the 100 questions under each of those chapters. And I actually just started a new tab, and I would do chapter 1 and I'd answer all those questions and then I'd move on. So it was very methodical, and that is the way I was able to do it, so that when I did open a Word document, I just was able to cut and paste and then refine. But I do want to say I did not write this book alone. There are 14 other women in this book, because my daughter said, you cannot write a book about women in insurance, which I was pretty sure I could. But she said, you need to put some different perspectives. So I have a lady that has just written a book about being an immigrant and then going into public service. I have my bestie, this insurance sister from another mister. She talks about the trials and tribulations she had of taking over an agency after working in a big brokerage space. So I have all these great tidbits of wisdom from other women that support the strategies and tools in the book. So it's a village. It's taking a village to put this manual together. And I did write it at an 8th grade level because I want this book. I want to be able to give this book to somebody that maybe hasn't graduated from high school yet, or maybe has not had the advantage of, completing high school, or somebody where English is their second language. I didn't want it to be over their head, because so many times people write leadership books and it's like, I'm on my plane, flying to California writing this book. And it's like, do you even remember what it was like when you first got to your leadership position? So it's written very simply because I wanted the concepts to be very simple.
I love that. I love that. And also, you say, you don't want it to be written like somebody who's on their plane, whatever. But also, I think sometimes people forget what it's like to sit underneath a leader. If they've been a leader for a while, they go out there to write a book or whatever, maybe they've forgotten what it was like to be able to sit under a leader. And, I think leadership can be a lot of different things. Some people think it's about leading a team, but it's not just about that. To me, it's like an orchestra of different items and instruments that have to work together. And to be the conductor to me is what leadership should be. It should not be, hey, I'm at the top of the podium, or hey, listen to me, or hey, I'm the one who puts together all the, employee reviews and I work all the numbers and I tell you what you need to be doing, right? But some people think that's leadership, and it's not. No, it's not at all. It's so much more mentoring and listening and taking the time to slow down and create the music with your team. And I love that you've really done a good job about being able to bring everything in. A lot of the junk we have in our heads, a lot of the misconceptions of what we actually go through and what some people think that they should be, right? Like the shoulds out there in the world. You really get into like, what are you really, rather than should, being able to work with.
And I also get really vulnerable in the book and talking about in the self-care section, talking about being a woman in insurance, going through childbearing things and going through an early menopause situation that put me in the hospital. I get really real about that kind of stuff because we all know what it's like, especially in the agency world. You're running from here to there, to fire to fire to fire. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to make my mammogram appointment. Or, oh my gosh, I forgot to eat today. And it's like, hey, you're not going to be able to show up for yourself, your team, your family, if your tank's completely empty. So I do try to remind women out there, like, you're doing the thing and you are giving everybody else everything they need. You got to take, even if it's 10 minutes every day, to check in with yourself. Make sure physically, mentally, emotionally, you're filling that tank up.
You do. So what has this book done for you personally?
It's done a lot of things. It taught me that I could write a book. My husband likes to joke that
it's a huge accomplishment. Huge.
I hadn't written a thank you note, more than a thank you note, since we got married. Like, he's like,
that would be my husband. He'd be like, you can't even go grocery list. What are you gonna go do? Write a book?
Oh yeah, it taught me that, like, you can be creative and you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to do it messy and not try to be perfect on the first go round. Because I think probably the most important thing, Teresa, for all of us out there is something that we can offer the world. There's a purpose. We're here. And my voice is the only voice that person out there can hear it from, or your voice. When you say what you were put on this earth to say, like, somebody needs to hear that. And if you're scared to say it, like, you're doing the world a disservice. So that's probably one of the best lessons that I've taken. Like, some people think, well, I don't have anything to say, or I'm not a leader, or, I don't have anything authentic or to offer the world. But you wouldn't be here. There's like a 1 in a billion chance of us all being here. So you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a purpose. So I think it's really just living into my purpose of not just helping women, but just helping everybody uncover that, like, brilliance that's just under the surface.
I love that. And I think that's one of the things I had to kind of get over or not really get over, because I don't think you ever truly get over. Sometimes you still have to talk yourself through it. But with starting the podcast and everything, I'm kind of like, well, and it's really funny because I publish on the Agency Intelligence platform, and I love them. They are wonderful. And I get together with the lady who does a lot of the editing, and they do a lot of the stuff with Agency Intelligence. And she comes to me and she's like, your solo episodes go really well. I go, no, they don't. And she's like, yeah, you need to do more of those. Like, no, that's not what we're here for. And she was like, no, they're, people like them, whatever. They have good watch ratios, whatever, right? And I just kind of sat there and thought, no. And it took me, honestly, obviously this year I was planning on doing more and I haven't, but I still kind of get into that mentally, is that, what I have to say, I just think it's not unique. I think everybody else is out there, but at the same point, there are so many times, and I've always said as an adult, if I ignore something God tells me 3 times, that he can hit me upside the head with a 2x4. Not that he needs permission, don't get me wrong, but I always say that if I have ignored something 3 times and I'm supposed to be doing it, then you know what? If I'm told 3 times, this is what you need to do, and if I ignore it, then shame on me. I cannot blame anybody, anytime, any place for what I do not have or have not accomplished, because I was told to go do it. If I didn't get my feet moving, that was my fault. That's up to me. And so
if you ignore something, like, it's just going to backfire on you.
Exactly. And how many times do we have that tugging at our spirit and we don't respond.
And I think that we can probably cop out there and say, I'm too busy, or I'm looking at my phone. I found that I'm so connected. I'm so keyed up all the time that when I go out on a morning walk or a walk with my dog, I do take my phone for emergency purposes, but I just don't look at it. I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
And I just try to walk in silence. And I'm a chatterbox. I could be talking to my friend on the phone, but I just have to be silent to listen to what messages are trying to be sent to me, because those voices are sometimes very, very quiet, but powerful.
And I think sometimes the junk in our head is so loud at the same time, and sometimes there's imposter syndrome out there. We all hear all these different words, right? And I think sometimes we have to step over our fear. I like to think of it as kind of like if you watch an old Irish movie, which I went to Ireland earlier this year, so it's in my head. But if you watch an old Irish movie, if you go to Ireland, they have these 3-foot, 2-foot rock fences, if you will, dividers, right? You've seen them in all the old movies or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can go scale them, right? You can just kind of not really hop over them, but you kind of shimmy over them, right? You kind of sit on them and what? But yeah, that's what it is sometimes. It's not easy. It's not going to be super, comfortable. It might have some rocks that are sticking up, at the top or whatever for security purposes. But the reality is that if we can just step over it, you can see what's on the other side, because your vision is telling you to go there, right? But at the same time, sometimes we just need to sit on that fence for a bit, pivot, put your feet down on the other side, stand up, and move forward. But we have to make a choice to be able to step over the fear, the voices in our head, all those things, to be able to be the leader, to be able to read these books, to be able to have those conversations with our team, with our family, with other people, to be able to level ourselves up, but level them up. We don't know. I had a therapist one time. I think I told you earlier, and my listeners know, my kids went through a situation in 2014, and we were in therapy for it. And I'll just be completely honest, both my kids committed suicide in 2014, 6 months apart. We were in a really weird situation. I was newly married. The whole thing just was not going well. We ultimately divorced, remarried. We were able to patch things up, which is great. I have a whole podcast. I have 2 episodes about it. If anybody wants to hear we have one about all the problems that led to it. And then we have another podcast about how we pulled ourselves out of it, which is great. But here's the deal, is that I know that when my kids both tried to commit suicide, I said, something has to change. Something in my culture, in my home. And I was that leader, if you will, which I don't even like the term in this sense, that I was the push. We have to get this done. We have to go here. You have to be this type of person, right?
Yeah.
I was the helicopter mom that was trying to make everybody this perfect, not really perfect, but this driven situation. And when we sat down, my daughter was like, Mom, you always tell me I'm perfect and I just can't be perfect. And I was like, I'm not telling you you're perfect to tell you have to be perfect. I'm telling you you're created perfect. We had to get some of that wording different.
Yeah.
But the therapist actually told me, I was like, I just want to protect you from all the things that could go wrong. And the therapist, when we were working together, said, don't take away her story, because you don't know what her journey has to be able to make her who she needs to be at the end of the day. You just have to be open, and you just have to be like a guide. You just have to be able to help. And I think that's really gone for being able to manage my team. It's my rebuilding of my marriage. All these things. It's I'm not here to walk your journey for you, but what I am here is to be here as your person, your confidant, but here's the deal. How many of us are having just a random conversation, or we can hear something on the radio, who listens to radio, Spotify, whatever, or a podcast. Something strikes you, and it might strike you, but the person next to you, it may not strike them.
Yeah.
You needed something out of that conversation that spoke to your soul. And I could literally be in the same room with my sister or with my husband or my kids, and they would not get the same thing out of that conversation. So we need to remember, whenever we put ourselves out there in a podcast or in a blog or in a book, like what you're doing, or even just a conversation with a person, we don't know how they're receiving it or what they need to be able to take away from this moment. So we do not need to think for other people. We don't need to take away their journey. We don't need to take away their story, because we don't know what they're going to take away from this moment. And it could be super life-changing for them. And we could never even know that it occurred, because that is not our responsibility. We're not supposed to know the end of the story. We're here to be a part of the story. And if we're not open, we're inhibiting the story. And I don't ever want to be that person. And that's what I love about your book. It's out there. Anybody can get anything from it that speaks to them and that just really sets their soul on fire. And that, to me, is such an available, beautiful thing for you to be able to do. So thank you so much for putting it out there.
That is so kind. And just being that vulnerable, like you were just vulnerable. Women feel like we can't do that. Like, we've got to have it all together. It sounds like you were, I love to have everything together, but sometimes I just don't. And if we go around trying to pretend we have it all together, the girl that is having a really hard day, she's not going to be able to relate to us. So I love that superpower of vulnerability is something that can connect women, men. Like, let's just be real. We're all humans. Like, nobody's perfect.
I love what you just said, that superpower of vulnerability. I love that. I'm going to write that down real quick. Hold on. Except I just went to a conference yesterday. And so now on my pens have like those little like plastic bubbles on the end of them.
Oh yeah. And you're trying to write real hard.
Exactly. But I love that superpower of vulnerability. I love that. So I know they're going to be like, you don't need to be quiet podcast, but I'm over here writing, people, because it's important. Again, we're writing this down well where these things really pop up, because it's an orchestra. It creates its own music, right? And if you have a piccolo versus a flute, it makes a very big difference in the orchestra, right? It makes a very big difference. And so we need to make sure that we play our instrument the way that it needs to be played.
And the other thing, Teresa, that I talk about in the book is you can be a manager or you can be a leader. And when I think about life, you think about this amusement park, and you've got your merry-go-round over there, and they're the managers on the merry-go-round, and they're just doing exactly what the handbook tells them to do, and they're doing the performance reviews, and they're doing the quality control. And then you've got your leaders over here on this roller coaster, and there's ups and downs and screams and turns and laughter, and everybody gets off this ride and the hair is like super crazy. And people are like, whoa, that was a ride. Like, that's what I want my team to remember about me when I'm not managing a team anymore. That, like, that was a fun ride. Like, there were challenges, there were struggles, but there's also like peaks and screaming, and it was fun.
Yeah. I think that's part of that authenticity, though, is when we're really, like you said, vulnerable, or when we're really honest. Our team sees us as a human being, not just as a dictator, not just, they can come to you and they can say, hey, I know this is part of the project, but this part of the project's not working, right? Mm-hmm. We need that feedback. That's part of being a leader. That's part of being the person who guides a team, is we don't do all the different pieces to it, right? So we need to make sure that we get that feedback. And unless we create a good space for that, we're not going to get that, either from our family, from our team, from our church, from Rotary, wherever it is. We need that feedback. Hey, this is a great event. Maybe you have a big charity event, right? And you really, really love this charity, right? But if you throw an annual ball that nobody wants to go to for the big fundraiser, then that's not going to be what's going to benefit your charity or whatever your passion is. We have to listen to that feedback, but that's part of that vulnerability and being open to that. And I love that you said that, because I think that's so, so big. I love it.
I just love it.
A little bit about what you're doing with this message, because I know we have the book, but I know you're doing a lot of other things too.
Yeah, just doing things like this, doing podcasts. Like the first podcast I ever did, I thought, oh gosh, I had the imposter girl coming up, and I just was like, shut up, like, go away. I don't have time for you today. Again, the thing that I have to say, somebody needs to hear. And just speaking internally, speaking externally at different functions and different workshop capacities. So I'm just having a lot of fun sharing it with whomever needs it. I thought I had done my job when I wrote the book and put it out on Amazon. And then God was like, oh, and by the way, I want you to share this message with 1 million women by 2026. So every day that I share it, whether I'm sharing it with 5 people or sharing it with 1 people or sharing it with a big podcast audience, I know that I'm like closer to that million goal. So he's like, how are you quantifying this? I'm like, I haven't figured that out yet, but it's just a lot of fun, and it's very organic and authentic in that. No, I didn't know I was going to write a book this time last year, and here we are. And I wouldn't know somebody like you had I not written this book. So I'm having a lot of fun making different friends.
Love it. I love it. So what does it look like tomorrow for you? What does it look like from here forward? What do you want to do with the book to be able to reach a million people, right? What is your vision? Because as we're listening to this, maybe somebody's listening and maybe they need a speaker. Maybe they want to be able to bring you into their podcast. Maybe they want to do something to help your mission. Where do you want to go from here that maybe part of our crew can be able to help you to be able to achieve?
Sure. So everybody can reach out to me on LinkedIn because that's where I live. I like to be a thought leader and I like to share on LinkedIn. A million women's a big reach. So I'm talking anything that could get me on that larger platform to share the message. And that's not selling a million books. Like, it's never about selling books. It's about sharing the message, whether it's verbally or you telling a friend or you buying a book for a friend. And I see this not just helping women. It can help men. Like, my husband was like, this book resonates with all people. But I also see a big need for this for rising college seniors, especially females. They need that bridge from their confines of their college career or graduating from high school or any kind of next step into the professional world. Is they get this next step syndrome where they're like, I don't know how to adapt to being an adult. Like, adulting is hard and nobody tells you how to do it. Like, being a mom is hard and nobody tells you to do it. So I would just say there's lots of different ways I can share this message. And if you have questions about what I can do, just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
I love it. I love it. You are on Facebook as well. You're on LinkedIn.
I'm not very active on Facebook. I've kind of like, there's just too many things and ads going on.
There are.
But I do have a page.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and then again, the book is on Amazon. So
it is.
Anybody can go get it. So they don't have to like be in a specific space to be able to go get it. It's very much easily out there. And I love what you're bringing to the industry, the insurance industry, especially. I think, and the statistically, 60% of the industry is women. I think it's like 64%, I think, is women, something like that, 62, 64. I can't remember for sure. But only women in C-suites or executive level is 18%. So
we had that at an event last night, and that was a trivia question. We were giving away a couple copies of my book, and that was one of the trivia questions.
I love it. I love it because I would love to see, and everybody needs to be wherever they're happy. So here's the deal. If nobody wants to be a leader or a C-suite or whatever, that's 100% fine. Like, nobody, you need to go, people out there need to go wherever sets their soul on fire. And that's what I tell people all the time. Go whatever sets your soul on fire. And it might change over time, right? So like when I had my kids and I was, just doing some things, I really didn't want to be in leadership anymore. I didn't have time.
Yeah.
But then
who does?
But I had more time. And then I was like, hey, let's go for it, right? So getting these ideas, getting the tools to be able to do what you want to do whenever you're ready for it is amazing. And so I love that this is out there. Everybody going out and get it. Reach on out to be able to connect, figure out where she's speaking, have her come speak, all these good things on your podcast, all these things. And we are here because we want to be able to make sure that the next generation is really, really empowered to be exactly who they've been created to be able to be. So Tinsley, this is a beautiful message.
You're so sweet, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me on today. Well, I love what you're doing for women.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And if I can do anything for you, just let me know, because that's what we're here. We're here to connect, right? So I love it. All right. Well, everybody, this has been another amazing episode of the Power Women in Insurance podcast. If you want to listen to other amazing women throughout the insurance space, check us out on Apple iTunes, podcast, wherever you stream your podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, blah, 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 all the places, right? So do make sure you check it out. We've been going on this journey for the last 4 years. Today on August 16th, 2024. We started back in February 2024, before COVID really hit. I like to be able to tell people that. And you know what? We have talked to so many amazing humans out there in the insurance space make sure that you get some, because you may be able to hear and get to know some people who really set your soul on fire, who say something that may go on out there and change your life. So Tinsley, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, everybody. I will see you next week.